Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to this version of MindShare, sponsored by Sanguine Strategic Advisors, where we're trying to bring industry experts on a variety of subject matters to help educate you about areas of interest to your business. So today we've got Tony Chiappetta from AppGuard. They provide a software product that helps keep computers secure. I'm going to let Tony tell a little bit more about the product, but first, I'm going to take a couple minutes and find out a little bit about Tony. We're going to do our normal thing where we ask Tony a little bit about himself. So Tony, tell us who you are.
Tony Chiappetta. I've been kind of grown up and raised in St. Paul. Have family now, wife and 4 kids just north of the cities, but started our company Chips here in 2001 and have been helping businesses throughout the Twin Cities metro now for over 20 years.
So Tony, tell me, what do you do?
Data security has always been an important topic to us because we realized years ago that if a company comes to find all their data is gone, whether that is because there was a hardware failure or somebody stole it or now bad actors getting in there and holding it for ransom, that's a really bad day. And in a small, medium-sized business, even that typically means it's the end of the business. With costs being in the millions of dollars to not only pay ransom but recover from a situation like that, let alone the loss of business reputation. That spells the end of companies, and we've seen a lot of that happening over the years. So now we're on a mission to help kind of stop those bad actors from taking advantage of businesses and help fortify communities around the country.
Tony, tell me why you do it.
When I heard about the AppGuard technology and its availability for commercial space, I initially saw the need in the healthcare space. I had a grandmother that was going to the hospital all the time and, hearing that patients were actually having, inadequate care because of a ransomware attack. I was really scared to find out, man, what if my grandma went into the hospital and something happened to her? She died in the hospital, some people have because of a ransomware attack. That got me motivated to help get the word out now, but there's such a kind of a need across the board. That's not just, big organizations like hospitals. It's the, city government. It's the local business that you do business with on a weekly, monthly basis that needs to, have this in place so that not only they stay in business and viable, but all of that non-public information that they keep on their customers doesn't get sold on the dark web and turn into a big mess for the customers of those entities.
Well, and that's interesting. So this is a really good place to start because I think that there's this tendency, we hear so much about cyber attacks and ransomware attacks, and people are almost a little bit numb to it. Like, oh, this isn't going to happen to me, whatever. So why don't you tell a couple of use cases? I don't want to be alarmist or anything like that, but it would help if you gave the people listening and watching today a little perspective of the types of attacks, the types of things that you've seen happen to companies that really have not or organizations, right? Government offices, whatever it is, that haven't taken adequate steps to put protection in place to protect their own data as well as their customer data.
Yeah, and maybe to clear it up, because what we find is that almost all the companies out there are doing the things that they think are adequate. They have an antivirus or they have a next generation product that is out there doing sophisticated detection. But the problem occurs when the bad guys go and do something that doesn't show up on the threat database. Right? It's only able to look for so many things, and that's a finite list. And as soon as it comes across and says, oh, you're not on my list, guess what? It allows that software to do whatever it wants. Take advantage of the organization, encrypt your data, exfiltrate it, those kinds of things. And, so a lot of organizations think they're protected because they have a detection scenario. They just don't realize that the bad guys are smart enough to, avoid being detected by the cameras on a security system, for example, right? You can duck around a camera. The bad guys have figured out how to do that in a, kind of a crypto cyber way. And we've seen a lot of different things. There's typically a level of kind of social engineering that goes into those things. For example, we got a call from a CPA firm. It was January, probably second week in January, a little bit after the first of the year. And the business owner of the CPA firm gets this email, and it's probably, an email they were super excited to get because it said, hey, I own a business. I just moved down the road from you and I'm looking for a new CPA. Attached is all my information. Could you take a look at it and let me know if this is something your firm can handle? So what did they do? They opened up that content, and it wasn't their business information. It was a ransomware attack. And before they knew it, all of their computers, their server was all crypto locked and, ransom demand, that kind of thing, right? Very bad situation for that firm.
Okay. So that's, again, is perfect, right? Because it really gives some insight into how these things happen. So talk a little bit about that. So again, like an email coming in, you think it's a completely harmless file, you click on it, and when they sent it, they've already anticipated that you had malware or whatever on your computer. So they've specifically designed it to be able to evade whatever malware that you have on your computer. And there you go, you're in trouble. So talk about some other methodologies that bad actors are using in order to launch these types of attacks.
So yeah, and in addition to that kind of thing where they send it out specifically, we've also seen scenarios where the attackers will get into the email and they'll be shadowing a conversation in the background. And when they say, sure, go ahead and send me that PO, send me that file, they insert themselves in the conversation, provide that as the outside party and says, here's that file. So right then all the defenses are down and they open it up. They've also, historically, there's been this scenario where they take USB drives and they'll put something on it like C-suite year-end bonuses or payroll information or something appealing, and they'll throw it in the parking lot at a point where they know, the average employee will come across it, and they'll take a look and be like, oh, who dropped this? And they'll take it into the business and they'll, want to see the contents. And as soon as they plug it into their computer, bad things start to happen. During COVID, there was a variation of that where they actually took those thumb drives and they shipped them out via US mail and UPS to the businesses. Here's your latest COVID information on the flash drive. And they're like, oh, they think it's something from the government. So again, they plug the thing in, and before they know it, they're compromised. So there's really sophisticated thoughts around what's going on. We've also seen nation states go out in the medical space. A lot of sensitive information there. We've seen China compromise the web portals of vendors so that when these, medical practitioners, hospitals, doctors, med device people, they go and they sign in, they go to the website, now their computer's compromised and it's exfiltrating all their information, that kind of thing. So it's totally legit website. It's just now got some extra code that's passed along to that, person visiting the site there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another scenario that I ran across was actually a law firm that had a VPN that allowed lawyers to access software programs through that VPN. But while they had the VPN open, they accessed a file of a virus, right, or something that contained ransomware. And so that invaded through the VPN the server of the business. So it's also not just you knowingly giving access, but it's understanding who all else you're giving access to your servers, right? It's not always the business owner or someone who's in the C-suite that is messing up. It can be someone further down in the organization and you have no knowledge it's even happening, right?
Yeah, for sure. And with, the work from home still being prevalent, started during COVID, we heard a lot of scenarios. There's a Fortune 500 company here in the Twin Cities. They had a, just basic salesperson working from home. They had at their house personal computer. They connect up to the office via that VPN. And that VPN is a network connection. Essentially, like they took their home laptop and brought it to the corporate office and plugged it straight into the network. It exposes everything that's on there. And this laptop, like he had said, had been compromised. It was waiting for that kind of connection. And as soon as they connected up to the VPN, it, replicated itself into the corporate environment and started causing havoc. And, we've also heard of, people at their house, they have, not only security systems, but they have those kind of IoT connected devices, the assistance type devices. Those things are a big point of compromise, including security cameras where people are able to get in.
Otherwise known as like their Wi-Fi network. Someone is like basically breaching their Wi-Fi network and all of a sudden is able to inject something bad into your network, basically, into your, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit, because a lot of business owners don't truly understand, they think, okay, I'll stop a data breach. But again, if it happens, I don't think that they fully understand the gravity of the impact on their business. So if you can give some insight into like what their law requires us, at least at the federal level, I know there's a lot of state laws as well, but talk a little bit about it, what it requires of a business if you become aware that there has been a ransomware attack or some type of data breach, especially if you're financial services, a law firm, IT company, whatever. What are the obligations of the business owner so people understand kind of what the breadth of the impact is?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kevin. It's we're talking August here in 2024, and the first half of this year, it's totally changed and ramped up to a new level. And from what we're hearing in the compliance standpoint, that's just the start. But from a really basic understanding across the board, no matter which state you're in, that data that you're entrusted with as a business, whether you have it on computers in your office or laptops, that kind of thing, or you have it out in the cloud, with Microsoft, Google, whoever, Amazon, everybody's got cloud services nowadays. They're storing files out there. The law says that that business is still responsible for the care and security of that data. So if the compromise happens in the cloud and if it happens at your office, you're still liable. And in Minnesota here, as well as pretty much every other state in the nation, there is a mandatory notification, no matter what industry that you're in. If you're in a regulated industry like, healthcare, or the FTC now is getting into that, there's additional fines and penalties that occur and, specific dates that you have to notify within. But essentially, you have a scenario where the data's been accessed, you have to notify your customers. And you think about the bad publicity that comes from such an event, a lot of organizations, end up losing the majority of their customers. There was a stat I saw, survey of people across America said that if they knew the business that they were doing business was compromised and their data was exposed, 80+% of them would switch to alternative vendors. So not a good day.
And let me ask you, so do you have any type of document or resource that has a list of all the state-by-state laws that regulate the obligations of businesses when it comes to their clients' information, and like Graham Leach or state laws that basically require particular disclosures or actions you have to take in the event that data has been compromised or there's been any type of ransomware attack?
We don't have something like that on file right now. It's changing, state by state, month by month. There are a number of professionals that, work with our customers, our resellers, that's where they specialize, is understanding that ever-changing legal landscape, and they'll be able to provide that latest information and what to be aware of. And, oh, you're in this state, this is something specific to you. But it is something that you almost have to be in constant contact with a professional nowadays, just like the HR laws are constantly changing. They're now changing on the kind of that data liability side.
Yep. And then so that is a good segue into talking about the liability. I mean, you talked about the impact to the business, lost customers, lost reputation, lost credibility, lost revenues, data recovery costs. I mean, it's just, I'd imagine you got to have some stats about like what the average ransomware attack actually ends up costing, not just in paying the ransomware, but just on notification requirements and things like that. But if you're a business that's operating in this day and age, would you operate without cyber insurance?
I would say no. There's so many different ways that the data can be compromised. Even if they were to do everything correct, so to speak, or within compliance standards. Compliance doesn't automatically mean security. That's a whole different, bar beyond compliance. But from, anything like a laptop getting lost and compromised, from one of the employees, to your cloud vendor getting compromised, to any of the scenarios we talked about with email or employee getting socially engineered to do something they're not supposed to. It's so easy nowadays. And as we found with the recent disruption a few weeks ago globally, it's not just data compromised, it's actually the dependency on the computers and the networks to be doing what they're supposed to for that organization. And that cyber insurance protects from both. It'll protect from the first party breach, third party breach, as well as disruptions. So
right, it'll give you, not only does it protect you from the liability, but it also can provide the economic resources in order to do the data recovery or do the remediation or provide credit monitoring or whatever the downstream impacts were.
correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, holy cow, right? I mean, you have all of these risks. We all have lots to worry about in our business without worrying about cyber attacks and ransomware and everything like that. And it seems like as we become more and more sophisticated in trying to figure out ways to protect ourselves, so too do the bad actors, right? They, like you said, the example you gave where they throw a USB down in the parking lot. I don't see how some malware that stops you from downloading something is going to stop that. How the heck does a business owner actually be able to protect themselves? It seems almost like you'd almost have to do it at the individual computer level to stop anything from entering that computer that is not native to that computer, right? I mean, that's the only way that you could possibly stop it.
Yep. Yeah, and even taking an action that you don't want it to, because you could have a file that looks benign, it bypasses your antivirus scan, doesn't match up with any of the signatures, and they look at the information and they don't understand that in the background it's going through all their data and exfiltrating it and getting ready to encrypt it and present a ransom demand and do all those things. It's one thing for the file to get to the computer, but for the malicious action to start to compromise the environment, that's where those attacks really get out of hand. And being able to stop those things from occurring is really the best way.
Yeah, and the reality is that, we hear about a new virus, but by the time Symantec or whoever the company is that's providing you your malware, I mean, it's not like they snap their fingers and all of a sudden they've got a cure to this virus. It may take a couple days, a couple weeks before they figure out a new fix to download all of their subscribers' apps. So it could leave you exposed for a few weeks while this malware or ransomware is out there, right?
Yeah. A couple of weeks has been the typical. As AI has been coming on lately, they've been shortening that time frame. But the bigger scenario is they have to see so many people get compromised with this bad situation for it to register like, oh, that looks like it was really bad. We should probably add that to our list of bad things to look out for, right? So now you get hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations that have been compromised so that the vendor elevates it to the potential of, hey, yeah, we should take a closer look at this, that kind of a thing.
So, Tony, obviously I know that, for instance, the CIA, right, is not going to let themselves be exposed to like ransomware or data breaches or things like that. There are organizations that have probably figured out like how to stop this from happening at that every single computer, right? So, tell me a little bit about what you guys do and what you have put together, because that's really one of the reasons I had you. I mean, obviously, you're an incredible wealth of knowledge about the subject of data security and compliance. But really, what I find fascinating is you've really taken technology that was really developed for government purposes, highly secure purposes, and you've put it into kind of the commercial marketplace for everyday companies in order to protect their devices at the actual device level.
Yeah, and so the origin of AppGuard, comes 12 years ago, where you mentioned the CIA was realizing that their intelligence officers are leaving headquarters, going out on missions, not going to be back for weeks, if not months, and the laptop has sensitive information. So how do you protect something against a nation state actor that has the ability to custom write attacks never seen before that are going to bypass your antivirus and your detection-based tools 100% of the time? And you need to ensure that that device that may not even have a network connection is not going to be able to get help from a server or anything like that. It's going to be completely on its own. How do you make sure that it's able to prevent every attack no matter what and not have any requirement of being updated or getting help from IT? Because, when you're on a covert mission, you just don't call timeout and be like, hey, I'll be right back with you after I talk to my IT guy about this weird thing on my computer.
I mean,
right?
that's what I do when I'm on a covert mission, but not everybody, right?
Exactly, right? So the guys we work with, that's their forte, is inventing niche cybersecurity solutions for the federal government. So when they identified this need and the complexity of it, instead of trying to do something that's already been done, the detect and respond, they said, we need to go a completely different route, a different methodology to get a level of protection that's not conceivable in that detection paradigm. So they actually took the principles, the technology that they invented in the 90s for network security called isolation and containment. So if you think of like a top secret network where nothing gets in, nothing gets out that's not supposed to, they took that tech and they turned it into a software and then went to Microsoft and said, hey, we need to put this into the core of Windows and change how the computer operates. Because out of the box, computers were designed to share information with the rest of the world, right? That's what they're meant to do. So when they get a command, do this, it's like, sure, I can do that. It just runs these commands, whether they're good or bad. And with the AppGuard protection in place, it stops that, unlimited actionable paradigm and says, okay, here's your mission, or in business context, employee, here's your laptop with your 5 or 10 applications you're supposed to use. Those are the only things that are valid on your computer. So it's not policing the actual websites or the content, but it's the actions the computer's allowed to take, so that when you find that flash drive or you get sent the malicious file or the website you go to now is compromised and it tells the computer to do something outside of its typical mission parameters, it's just going to ignore it because it knows that's not a valid action. It doesn't have to figure out who told me to do this or is it good or bad. It's just like, that's not on the mission. Sorry. And that's the way.
So when you put that USB, that flash drive into the computer, the executables in your computer say, okay, open this. But you're saying this software says, this isn't part of our mission, so to speak. You're not allowed to open up unknown flash drives in order to download files, right?
Yep. Yeah, it could be that. It could be maybe flash drives are allowed. So when that script goes to run, it says, oh, I don't run scripts from that location. It could be maybe embedded into a file that is associated with an application that's trusted. Mm-hmm. But when that trusted program opens and it tries to do something like, oh, go right to the registry, go run this PowerShell script, do this and that's outside of the normal program behavior, it says, Word doesn't need to run a script. So we're just going to ignore that part of it and let you see your Word document and edit it.
Yeah. So let me throw out a scenario though. So, I get a lot of emails back and forth. People, my VP of finance is sending me our financials for the month. And I'm like, oh, now I'm going to go to open a file and it's going to tell me I got to go through 6 other steps and whatever. Or I made a request for a quote and some vendor is sending me that request for quote. And now instead of just opening it, now I've got to go add him to a safe list or whatever. How disruptive and how cumbersome is it to be able to manage something like this?
Yeah, so those things that you're talking about, kind of adding to a safe list, going and authenticating, those are all data level protection capabilities that vendors have invented to help safeguard access to things. AppGuard's going to be protecting the actual computer software and the applications installed. So whether you use Microsoft Office or something else, use browsers, for example, some kind of program to see your PDF, those are going to get put into the scope of the mission that's allowed to happen on the computer. So you get that file, it doesn't care who the file's from or what the contents of the file is. It just verifies that, oh, you're allowed to use that program associated with the file. Okay, it'll open that program. It'll show you the contents of the file, whatever that happens to be, because that's the typical mission. But when it says, oh, by the way, also do X, Y, and Z, those other things that aren't normal behavior for the application, the computer is just going to ignore it. Be like, no, you don't need to do that.
Like you said, it's containing it. Right. Exactly.
Yep. And the cool thing is with the isolation containment technology, that protected application now not only can't go outside of its barrier, but any attacks coming in are stopped as well. So even if that vulnerability is there, whether it's known and not patched or totally unknown, it hasn't been found before, when that attack comes in and it tells the computer, hey, do this, it'll ignore it because it's like, no, I don't need to listen to you. And it just totally doesn't even execute that request to compromise the system. So we can have that, air-gapped machine or the machine that's, traveling, working from home and can't be really controlled very well with the IT vendor, making sure it gets all the security updates. It can still run safe and secure with AppGuard protecting it and that capability.
Right. So one last subject I want to, so this sounds like something like this is something for like government agencies, Fortune 500 companies that have a ton of money to spend on something like that. Like, is something like this cost prohibitive? Now, I'm ignoring for a moment what the incredibly excruciating and debilitating costs can be of dealing with a data breach. But the concern always is for business owners, oh, what's this going to cost me? So give me an idea, like, is this something that's prohibitively expensive that really only larger businesses can use? Or can a mom, pa, law firm, a chiropractor office, whatever, use it just like a Fortune 500 company would?
Yeah, you're right. It is enterprise scalable. It's used throughout the intelligence community, the U.S. military, those kinds of large scale deployments, as well as enterprises in the tens of thousands of end users or installations. But when we got asked to kind of figure out market adoption here in the U.S., all of my background is working with small, medium-sized businesses throughout the Midwest. So when we showed it to them and told them the price, on a monthly consumable license is only $15, a lot of people said, hey, I thought it'd be 3 to 4 times the expense. And, we've had very small offices of like bookkeepers, CPAs, bank branch offices, 3, 5, less than 10 people there. And they love it. It's keeps them safe and secure and doesn't break the bank.
Yeah, it sounds like the business owner will have to cut out their Starbucks like 1 or 2 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about it, it's $15, that's like 50 cents a day per employee, right? It's like, you can spend a lot more money on other things that don't secure your environment.
Well, right. And just for the peace of mind, it seems like a no-brainer.
So one of the things I want to address is this kind of ever-changing landscape of compliance, whether you're talking the cybersecurity requirements. It seems like every carrier has a different set of questions that they ask. It can be, 1 page, it can be 10 pages, that kind of thing, as well as things like HIPAA or defense contractors now going into 2025 are going to be subject to the new CMMC, the cybersecurity maturity model certification. And it's getting very, very complex out there. It's as we mentioned earlier, it's changing all the time. So to ensure that you're staying up to date and staying within compliance, it really takes working with a professional. And there's a lot of skilled people out there that are IT vendors that can help understand what those are. I can tell you when we've been asked to take a look at that and talk with people in the insurance industry, they're starting to recognize AppGuard as something that goes beyond what they're looking for, because they're really wanting to avoid the instance of a data breach that they have to pay a claim on, right? So we're able to go and do that, help satisfy those requirements. And if you get into more of those sophisticated government regulatory type things, you'll have to find a third party that the government has certified to do the audits of your compliance, right? And testify that, hey, this organization is actually doing all the required things. And I can tell you that there's an auditor in town. Their organization does a great job, works with those defense contractors all around the country. And their engineers that do the audits looked at AppGuard and they said that, hey, there's 25 specific requirements out of 110 that they relate directly to that endpoint. And AppGuard is that tool that if anybody's having problems, they can install AppGuard, enforce that policy that's defined for the organization. And AppGuard, by virtue of how it's designed, not only enforces those 25 controls, but shows an audit of, these devices are protected. This is when it was enforced. They're still enforced, and helps to, not only protect on day one, but show that moving forward.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, because I think a lot of small businesses now are being introduced to the idea of getting cyber insurance by their insurance producers, insurance brokers, and they go through the application and they say, do you have a policy in place? Do you protect computers? Do you blah, like there's this whole list of questions. And you kind of get the feeling that a lot of those guys, they just kind of go down and check the boxes. Yes, 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 yes. But they're really not taking all the steps that they need in order to comply. That can result in a denial of an insurance claim in the event that it happens. And it seems silly not to have a relatively inexpensive solution that not only ensures that you're protected, but also means that you're complying with the terms, the conditions of your insurance agreement with your carrier, right?
Right. Yeah, you don't want to have a submission on a claim only to get denied because you checked yes to this one box and you answered incorrectly. So now we're not gonna honor your policy.
The insurance company would never do that.
Never.
Yeah. Well, Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. We put a QR code in the MindShare webinar, so if people want to get a hold of you, they'll be able to reach out to you directly and talk to you about the product. You're obviously a wealth of knowledge about the subject. We really appreciate you sharing that knowledge with our viewership. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I appreciate it. And sometimes with everything going on, cybersecurity can be a very sensitive topic. So I'm always, welcome to have a kind of a confidential, no pressures conversation around, what advice do I have and, can we help them moving forward kind of a thing.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. And thanks to our viewership today for joining us. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time on MindShare.